Brethren, good morning, good afternoon, and a good evening to you all. It is wonderful to see so many of you joining us here today and a lot of smiling faces. As always, I shall start with the important housekeeping notices. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted onto our YouTube channel. Therefore, those of you who do not wish to be seen, please feel free to turn your video off. To avoid any disruptions during the talk, could you please ensure that your microphones are kept on mute throughout? There will be a Q&A session after the talk. If you'd like to ask today's speaker a question, please use the hand up icon, which can be found in the participants or reactions tab on Zoom. Once you have done this, please wait for your name to be called out. You may then unmute yourself, ask your question, but please don't forget to mute yourself again. To save your spot in the queue, you can do this at any time during the talk. I would also like to remind brethren to please keep to questions regarding the topic of the talk and to avoid making any statements. This also includes the chat area. As always, we're giving away 2 of our bespoke Freemasons Without Borders mugs. For a chance to win, please answer the following question. In olden times, what was a tegulator? Please type your answer in the chat section and the first 2 correct answers will win. Brethren, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Worshipful Brother Tony Harvey. Tony was initiated into Pioneer Lodge number 9065, the Scout Lodge for Derbyshire in June 1991. He is a past master of 4 lodges and a member, founder or honorary member of lodges and chapters in London, 6 provinces and 3 districts overseas. He is currently the provincial membership officer in the province of Nottinghamshire and the head of learning and development in the province of West Kent. The Board of General Purposes appointed him as the 2012 Bristonian Lecturer. In 2016, he was appointed Past Assistant Grand Director of Ceremonies in the United Grand Lodge of England and was promoted to the rank of Past Junior Grand Deacon in April 2021. Tony's contribution to the members' pathway has been described as a game changer for many of our lodges, and in February 2020, one of Freemasonry's major social media influencers called it one of the greatest innovations to Freemasonry in the last 100 years. Outside of Freemasonry, Tony is a lifelong Scout. He is a national volunteer and trainer with the Scout Association in his hometown of Long Eaton, as well as holding degrees in psychology and education and in management. Tony is a member of the Royal Historical Society and the British Psychological Society, amongst many others. Tony is also a freeman of the City of London and a liveryman of the Worshipful Company of Educators. Worshipful Brother Tony, the virtual floor is yours.
Well, Gurdeep, thank you very much indeed for that warm introduction. And brethren all, thank you so much for being here this evening. It's wonderful to be back with Freemasons Without Borders. And I can only apologise for not being quite as present over recent weeks and months as I'd like, but I've been rather busy delivering talks. And this particular talk that we have this evening, Back to the Future, Freemasonry from 1971 to 2071, is my latest talk. In fact, this is the closest I've ever got to a commission. I was actually asked to do a talk for somebody's 50th anniversary, and this gave me the idea of comparing Freemasonry in 1971 to today, and it was just a short leap from there, really, to think about it 50 years from now as well. Some of you will be familiar with some of my talks about the development of Freemasonry in our lodges, and you can piece everything together from there. So, brethren, in the 1985 film Back to the Future, Marty McFly had to resolve issues from the past in order to secure his future. I believe today we Freemasons are in a similar position. I believe we have to understand the historic role of evolution and change in Freemasonry and our membership trends over at least the last 50 years if we are to secure the future of our lodges. So in this talk, I will compare Freemasonry today with how it was in 1971, and then I'm going to look ahead to what it might be like in 2071. Now, before I do, I wish to make 2 things clear. First of all, I'm speaking in a personal capacity and not on behalf of United Grand Lodge or any of its provinces, districts, or lodges. And secondly, my comments are aimed at lodges and their members. Now, as I didn't become a Freemason until 1991, I've relied on records and recollections to look at Freemasonry 50 years ago. You'll have to work out which of the three, incidentally, is me, brethren. I've consulted various sources within Grand Lodge and its provinces, and I've spoken with a good number of Freemasons who were members back then. Now, to look at Freemasonry in our lodges in 2071, I shall imagine two scenarios. One will be if we follow our current trends and trajectories. As for the other, well, I shall come to that. So let's start with 1971. To get a point of reference, let's look at what was happening in the world back then. Well, here in the United Kingdom, Queen Elizabeth II had spent 19 years on the throne. Edward Heath was Prime Minister, and Margaret Thatcher was his Education Secretary. In 1971, we changed our currency to the decimal system and had not yet joined the European Community or Common Market. Rolls-Royce went bankrupt and was nationalised. 66 people were killed in a crush at a football match between Celtic and Rangers at Ibrox Park. Rod Stewart told us, Maggie May, John Lennon asked us to imagine, and George Harrison proclaimed, "My sweet Lord." Beyond these shores, Richard Nixon installed a secret taping system into the White House. After the drama of Apollo 13, Apollo 14 successfully landed on the moon. Disney World opened. The New York Times published the Pentagon Papers, revealing that the US government had lied to the American people. Switzerland extended their franchise to women, and the USA extended theirs to 18-year-olds. Intel produced the first microprocessor, marking the start of the digital age, and Ray Tomlinson sent the first email. Greenpeace was founded, the Aswan Dam was completed, and the BBC broadcast its first Open University programme. In the cinema, we watched Diamonds Are Forever, A Clockwork Orange, and Dirty Harry. Or at least some of us did. I was too young. In the southeast of London, an 11-year-old Tony Harvey, having passed his 11 plus, embarked on his secondary education at Erith School. I was also proud to have achieved my Scout Standard Award. Brethren, it's interesting to see how the threads that we spun 50 years ago would knit together to form the world we have today. Those same threads of social change, technology, governments, treaties, the environment, and the economy will also shape the next 50 years. Of course, what happens in that time really depends on what we, that's you and I and those who follow us, do between now and then. So let's now look at Freemasonry in 1971. And of course, I'm looking at it from the perspective of English Freemasonry, but forgive me for that, brethren. That's my own perspective and experience. Well, the Grand Master, His Royal Highness the Duke of Kent, had held that office for just 4 years. All lodges in London were administered from the Grand Secretary's office. All administration was done by paper and post. In terms of members, it was shortly after our peak. Estimates vary, but that is likely to have been between 450 and 500,000 memberships. 51 new lodges were founded in 1971, 19,161 Grand Lodge certificates were issued to new Master Masons, and there were 7,547 lodges on the roll. The average membership of a lodge was around 60. In 1971, Freemasons tended to be rather quiet about their membership. One friend of mine only discovered that his father was a Freemason after he had died. The public viewed us with some suspicion, fed occasionally by accusations suggesting, but rarely proving, corruptions by Freemasons. We did not respond to attacks and we did not comment to the press. There were no Masonic periodicals for members or the public to read. But it hadn't always been this way. Prior to the Second World War, Freemasonry was very much in the public eye and highly regarded. Most royal princes were members. Masonic periodicals could be bought at any newsagent, and the mainstream press often featured news stories about Freemasonry. The then president of the Board of General Purposes, Sir Alfred Robbins, was a journalist after all. The first 30 years of the 20th century had seen a lot of change and growth in Freemasonry, following the Grand Mastership of the former Prince of Wales and then the First World War. However, the rise of fascism in Europe during the 1930s pushed Freemasonry underground, and we then hid from public view. Although we continued to grow until the late 1970s, we also became increasingly disconnected from the wider world. The pace of change slowed to a level unseen since the 30-year Grand Mastership of the Duke of Sussex, who had sought to stabilise the craft after the Act of Union in 1813. Many members who joined in the latter half of the 20th century thought Freemasonry did not change, that the lodge practices at the time they joined had always been followed. History, however, tells us otherwise, that everything changes. It teaches us that unless institutions and organisations evolve, then they stagnate and die. The only ancient organisations to survive until today, in this country at least, including the monarchy, the City of London, the church, and our older universities, have constantly evolved. Over a third of all lodges formed since 1717 are no longer with us. The three remaining time immemorial lodges, which together with the fourth formed the first Grand Lodge, have only survived because they have successfully evolved. Today, they are modern membership units and very efficiently run. They have respected their past and their traditions, but they've not adapted, but they have adapted them too, to remain relevant and attractive to new members. So what has been happening in the 50 years since 1971? The major change has been a switch in the late 1970s from growth to decline. And the result is our membership is now back to around what it was at the end of 1920, when we had 3,612 lodges. Today, we have 7,233, almost exactly twice as many. The number of Grand Lodge certificates issued each year is now around a third of what it was in 1978. We are still initiating 8,000 new Freemasons each year, more than the number of lodges. However, we are losing them much faster, at around 11,000 each year. Feedback suggests that too many new members are not satisfied with what they experience after they join our lodges. No wonder, therefore, that our lodges are getting smaller too. The average size is currently 33 members, and that's reducing. This poses a risk to the future of Freemasonry itself, as well as to the smaller lodges. Smaller lodges are fragile. There's less diversity in membership, a narrower range of skills, less time and fewer people available to do the essential jobs, less energy to apply to planning and managing the future health and prosperity of the lodge. At the point many lodges realise that their inevitable destiny is to close, they have fewer people with the creativity, enthusiasm, and ability to challenge the inevitable and turn decline into growth. Although there are a number of alternative futures for lodges that become unviable, often the members give up and return their warrant. Sadly, we lose not only a lodge with an important history, but we often also lose members who choose not to join elsewhere. Thankfully, brethren, the picture is not all doom and gloom. Resignations are coming down faster than initiations, thanks to mentoring, education, and the use of tools such as the Members Pathway and Solomon. Light Blues clubs are complementing the work of lodges and providing an enhanced experience of Freemasonry. During the COVID-19 pandemic, younger brethren have demonstrated that you don't need to have been a Freemason for years before you can take a leading role. They have spearheaded charitable projects, delivered PPE and food to those in need, and helped us to learn to use new technology. Lodges are sharing more responsibility with newer members, which in turn is increasing their sense of satisfaction and of feeling valued and useful. As for declining numbers, many lodges are bucking the general trend. More and more now recognise that we can preserve our landmarks and principles, our ritual and our meaning, and at the same time modernise the way we plan, organise and manage our activities. These lodges are already seeing growth. One of the many changes we've seen in recent years is the growing popularity of special interest lodges. It used to be the case that most people would join a lodge in their local community. Today, our social contacts and friends tend to come from our hobbies and interests rather than our geography. Special interest lodges capitalise on this social trend and attract enthusiasts who are willing to put even more energy into something that is doubly satisfying. Historically, many lodges were founded to attract a particular group of people. Your predecessors in your lodges made their early decisions to suit those people's lifestyles and circumstances. So the question I would ask all lodges is, which particular group do you wish to attract today, and how have you adapted to suit their lifestyles and their circumstances? Now, brethren, this prompts me to ask even more questions. Why are 8,000 new members still joining every year? What exactly is attracting them to Freemasonry? Then I'd like to know, why are so many leaving early? And what can we do to retain their interest and grow their commitment? Finally, what can we do to see a return to real growth in more and more of our lodges? Well, to find answers, let's look at research findings rather than anecdote. Government research tells us why people join membership organisations. And the top 4 reasons are the satisfaction of seeing results, enjoyment, personal achievement, and finally, meeting people and making friends. Research by United Grand Lodge has identified 9 different reasons people join Freemasonry specifically. Some are attracted to our history and tradition. Others are looking for personal development to be a better man, while others want respect and status, and others still want an escape from the stress of everyday life. Some join on the recommendation of family or friends. Some are interested in mystical or esoteric matters, while others are just curious. Well-run lodges have great capacity to create satisfaction, enjoyment, personal achievement, and new friends. However, do all lodges actually deliver these? Do they focus on one or more of the 9 different reasons people join Freemasonry rather than any other organisation? Do they set out to create a great experience for their new members? Brethren, most resignations are submitted in the 2nd year of membership. This suggests to me that many new members do not get what they had hoped. Other research by United Grand Lodge of England tells us that the most important factors for member satisfaction are, firstly, feeling valued as a member. Secondly, developing new friendships. Thirdly, developing my Masonic knowledge. And lastly, feeling included. So, if in the first 2 years after a person is initiated, his lodge does not satisfy his reasons for joining, and if he does not feel valued, does not form new friendships, develop his understanding of Freemasonry and feel included, then he's likely to leave. Brethren, it's my strongly held belief that too many lodges fail to satisfy the hopes and expectations of new members. And this is why around 20% of new members resign before they receive their Grand Lodge certificate. It seems to me that many of these lodges seem to offer a one-size-fits-all form of Freemasonry, in which new members join a lodge conveyor belt and follow a path defined for them by others, irrespective of their own motives for joining or their personal needs and circumstances. Now, such an approach may have been acceptable in times gone by when we were employed in hierarchical command and control organisations, in which decisions were made at the top and issued as orders to deferential employees. Brethren, they don't work for the 21st century Freemason. The organisation he works for listens to and consults its staff and its customers. It shares decision-making and involves others in their planning and implementation. It's more flexible and fast-moving, relying on shared goals and agreed principles to drive actions rather than rules and procedures. The 21st century Freemason is used to his employer and others valuing and appreciating his intellect, skills, creativity, and individuality. If we are going to satisfy this 21st century Freemason, we need our lodges to adopt a member-centric approach. Lodges that do this offer a membership experience in which every member feels understood, valued, and included, and involved in the way that he wants. Thankfully, more and more lodges seem to be evolving to do this. However, some brethren may feel unhappy with such developments. But it's no good us complaining about how today's generation is so different from us. Complaining won't change the new reality, and it certainly won't return us to a golden past. If we want Freemasonry and its lodges to thrive, we need 21st century solutions to respond to 21st century facts. On average, each of our lodges has initiated just over 11 new members in the last 10 years. If a lodge has not grown as a result and wishes to do so now, the answer is not to find yet more candidates. First has to identify and resolve the root cause of decline. A lodge that is declining needs to fix the leaky bucket. It makes no sense to bring a man into a lodge that cannot satisfy his expectations. We know he will probably leave. However, once a lodge has plugged the cause of any losses, then it can work on attracting and retaining new members. And this is precisely what growing lodges are already doing. They have modernized their planning, their organization, communication, and decision-making. They recognize the talents of each member and find a way to involve them and their families. Now, I summarize what these lodges are doing in what I call the 7 habits of highly successful lodges. I'll simply list them here for now, but I do expand on them in an article on my website, and I describe them in even more detail in another talk and in a book I'm currently writing. So the 7 habits are, first of all, great ritual and ceremonial. Secondly, efficient administration. Thirdly, active support for newer members. Fourthly, involvement of all members. Fifth, a willingness to evolve and change. Sixth, harmony. And finally, number 7, leadership from the leadership from the chair. Now, I'd like to leave the 7 habits there for a while. I shall return to them shortly. But first, let's now imagine what our lodges, and by extension Freemasonry as a whole, might be like in 2071, when, incidentally, I shall be 111 years old. Now, of course, even with advances in medical science, the likelihood is that I will not be around to see this. However, I care deeply about Freemasonry and what our lodges will be like 50 years from now. I want people to enjoy what I have enjoyed, to benefit from the growth and satisfaction that Freemasonry has given me, and for Freemasonry to still be a force for good in the world. I also want the lodges to which I belong to still be around, still making good men better. Now, as I don't have a crystal ball or a time machine, I will imagine the future using 2 scenarios. The first is based on current membership trends, and the second scenario is based upon more and more of our lodges modernizing the way they organize and manage themselves while sustaining Freemasonry's enduring and timeless landmarks, principles, ritual, and meaning. So let's imagine the first scenario. If the decline we have seen in the last 20 years continues at the same rate until 2071, our total membership will be around, actually just below, 50,000. If our lodges still have an average of 33 members, there will be only 1,500 of them still working, compared with more than 7,200 today. However, the chances are the average size of our lodges will have reduced even further. If lodges have an average of 20 members, there will be 2,500 of them, but they will be very fragile indeed. As well as many lodges having closed, so too will the majority of Masonic halls. Many will simply not be financially viable. A membership of 50,000 will not sustain our 47 provinces, so there will have to be some consolidation at that level. And whether we will be able to sustain our central administration, including the iconic Freemasons Hall in London, is questionable. Brethren, that's just the numbers. Now let's consider how the experiences of members will change with a declining membership. As more and more lodges shrink, the responsibility for sustaining them will fall on fewer and fewer shoulders. It will be more and more difficult for them to create satisfying member experiences. Men will continue to join, seeking those things we know have attracted over 86,000 new members to Freemasonry in the last 10 years. But as the lodges are unlikely to be satisfying those expectations, it's likely that many new members will leave soon after joining. I say, if the decline continues. Our membership decline is at a steady rate. Statistics and behavioral science tells us that trends continue at the same rate until something significant changes. In other words, the decline will continue unless we do something significantly different. What many lodges have been doing in recent years has not been sufficient to reverse this decline. Unless we act now, the decline will continue. Now, you may say I'm being pessimistic, that we've managed so far that everything will be okay. My answer to that is blunt. Having seen a steady decline from 500,000 to less than 200,000 members over a 50-year period, we cannot afford to leave the next 50 years to chance. For me, this scenario is unpalatable. I don't want Freemasonry to follow other membership organisations and become a pale shadow of its former self. I want it to thrive. I want your lodges and my lodges to thrive. I want every seeker of Freemasonry who meets our membership requirements to have the chance to enjoy what I have enjoyed. So, brethren, let's now imagine my second scenario. In this version of the future, lodges modernise the way they organise themselves. They update their administration. They update their administration, communication, and decision-making to take advantage of 21st century technology. They adjust their practices to become more flexible, responsive to needs, and to suit the 21st century lifestyles. They concentrate on offering something special, of a high standard, to attract people who are especially suited to what they have to offer. Let's then imagine that within any geographical area, any man wanting to join can choose a lodge that matches his personal interests, whether they be affiliating with former pupils from his school or university, his profession, the Scouts, his other interests, say in sports or vehicles, or he can choose a lodge which satisfies his particular interest in Freemasonry, whether that be in history and tradition, mystery or esoteric knowledge, or Freemasonry's social or educational aspects. Let's also imagine that these lodges offer member-centric Freemasonry, in which the needs, interests, talents, and contribution of every individual member are understood and catered for. The lodges probably do not do this all on their own. They will be supported by Masonic associations, such as New and Young Masons clubs, that complement what the lodge offers. In this way, each member gets what he wants from Freemasonry, some aspects coming from his lodge and others from elsewhere. Let's also imagine that lodges make full use of technology to support what happens in their tiled meetings with social, educational, and networking experiences from further afield. Actually, brethren, we don't need to imagine this, because since COVID-19 and the onset of online or virtual Masonic events such as this one, this is already a reality. But we do need to continue, perhaps by offering hybrid events with talks for live audiences broadcast to those who cannot be present, after the lodge has been closed, of course, and we will need to keep pace with the opportunities that ever-changing technology will afford us. Finally, let's imagine that Freemasonry is once again recognised and respected in our communities, normalised in the public consciousness. Let us imagine that our members are proud and happy to talk about their membership, using language which is readily understood by those who are not members. That means using everyday language suited to the audience, rather than the language of the ritual, which is really only suited to the lodge room. Now, I won't forecast what our membership figures will be under this second scenario. I don't have any data on which to create such a forecast. Let's imagine for now that we arrest the decline and we hold the numbers to around what they are today. If so, I anticipate there will be fewer lodges, but each will be stronger and each will be focused on particular strengths and aimed at particular candidates. Now, how do we make this happen? How do we arrest the decline in our lodges and ensure that as many as possible have a future? Well, I suggest that the first thing a lodge should do is review its current position and practices to determine whether it's fit for the future and able to attract and retain likely future members. Part of this may involve identifying a particular group of people it will wish to introduce to membership. That would mean understanding that group's needs, interests, and circumstances. The second thing a lodge should do then is to set a goal and build a plan for the future. No goal can be achieved without a plan. Goals bring people together for a common purpose, and plans coordinate everyone's activities so that no effort is wasted. A 5 to 10 year plan works best for our purposes. My suggestion would be that the plan considers how the lodge would develop my 7 habits of highly successful lodges, or perhaps even your own version. Just to remind you, my version is, first of all, great ritual and ceremonial, efficient administration, active support for new members, involvement of every member, a willingness to evolve and change, harmony, and finally, leadership from the chair. Now, how should a lodge go about all of this? Actually, brethren, the means to do this, a toolkit if you like, already exists. And it's called the Members Pathway. The Members Pathway takes lodges through 11 steps to review and plan their future, and then attract, introduce, and retain new members. It contains guidance and approaches developed by and used in our most successful growing and thriving lodges. Not only that, within each province, there are skilled people ready, willing, and able to help a lodge make best use of these techniques. They are the provincial membership officer and the provincial mentor. So to conclude, brethren, if we want our lodges to survive and thrive, if we want future generations to enjoy Freemasonry as we have done, we cannot allow the decline of the last 40 years to continue. We must act now. We are today's guardians and stewards, not just of our lodges, but of Freemasonry itself. If we don't act, who will? If we don't act, what will future generations say of us? If we don't act, what will be our legacy? I know what I want my legacy to be. I want it to be strong and healthy Freemasonry, a beacon of light to the world, offering great experiences for tomorrow's people who then make a difference and help their world to become a better place. Brethren, we all face a choice between my 2 scenarios of the future. For our predecessors' sake, for your sake, my sake, and for all our successors' sake, let's choose a strong and healthy future. And let's act today to make the future of our lodges and of Freemasonry itself something that will reflect well on our choices. Brethren, thank you very much indeed for your attention. I'm now going to hand back to Gurdeep, and I know that there's a number of questions coming because I've seen the hands pop up. So thank you very, very much indeed, brethren.
Thank you, Tony, so much for that very informative and exciting talk, taking us to the future, giving us an insight into Freemasonry in 2071 and returning us back. And yes, let's go straight to the questions. You've certainly aroused a lot of interest. We'll go first to John Harris.
Okay, John.
Good afternoon, Tony. Thank you very much for a most interesting talk. Tony, from a personal point of view, which you don't know about, I was initiated in April 1971.
Oh,
with my twin brother.
Right.
That year, Friars Lodge 1349 celebrated its 100th centenary. So this year it's 150. In fact, my grandfather was initiated into Friars in 1928, as my father was initiated in 34. The same year, my maternal grandfather's lodge, Leadenhall, and I know there's 2 members online this evening who are members of Leadenhall 4297. That's the personal point. Now, I think one of the most important things is that the decline of membership is because it goes back to Peter Reynolds saying something which I agree with. Bums on seats, excuse the expression. So many lodges think the more members we have, the better the lodge. I'm afraid quality is more important than quantity, which I'm sure you will agree with.
Absolutely, yes.
The next thing is, when a person is interviewed, they have to really know what they're coming into. And if they aren't right for the order, then it's better that we take the attitude that they should not be accepted into the craft just to boost numbers. And I feel that this is very, very important today. Anyhow, my thank you very much again. And thank you, Tony.
John, thank you. And wonderful to know that the time span that I chose for this, well, actually it chose me simply because of who asked me to write it. And he, like you, was initiated 50 years ago. So congratulations on your 50th anniversary, John. Your central point is one that I totally agree with. We use numbers as indicators. They're not the final measure of the success of something. What is important, of course, is the experience that people have of Freemasonry and the impact that Freemasonry has on their lives. But if we seek to be an organization with the infrastructure that we have that seeks to have the impact that it seeks to have, then we need to be strong enough as an organization. We need to be resilient enough. And it's not that we can't attract people. We are bringing in the numbers. You know, a lot of people think that our challenge is to find more members. Of course, we need more members. We need a constant supply of members, but it's not that area in which we're failing. The area in which we're failing, brethren, is we're losing them, and we're losing more than we're gaining. And the reason for that is not just because, well, there may be an element of it, and in fact, I believe there is an element of it, where our surplus of lodges are accepting people who perhaps, if they were to stand back and not be quite so concerned about their need to bring in more members to their lodge, if they were to look at the quality of the member a little bit more deeply, they might do as you suggested, John. But it's not just the quality of the member coming in, it's the quality of the experience our lodges are giving those members. And this is why I'm very concerned about this, what I call conveyor belt Freemasonry, one size fits all Freemasonry, where the new member has very little say over what happens to him in many of our lodges. And I think that is one of the large contributors to the poor experience and the reason so many people are leaving. So yes, quality of candidate, but also quality of the Masonic experience we're giving them, I think is key to the solution. Thank you, John. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I'm wishing you a speedy recovery as well. We will go to Othman.
Hi, Tony.
Hello, Othman.
We're going to be seeing each other twice this week.
Okay. Jolly
Uh,
good.
I totally agree that something needs to be done. We're losing members because the lack of tolerance and the lack of acceptance that not all people are the same. The beauty in the rainbow are in its color. The different color can do different things to the lodge. The new candidate can do different things, but you need help. So your job is to take a rough stone and turn it to a smooth one. Your job as a member is to catch him by the hand and guide him through the ceremony, through every point. Your job is to train him on the office before he gets the office. But the most important job you got is to listen to him. I know a lot of people resign, putting causes financial or household, and I know it wasn't that, it's bullying. You have to perform as good as me. Well, sorry, I can't. English is my third language, and I'm dyslexic. So you have to bear with me, and you have to let me do it the way I feel it comfortable. You put pressure on me to perform, I would have gone.
You know, Othman, I think I feel very strongly about this issue. I think we've got to be offering a member-centric approach in our lodges. But I think too many of our lodges are too small. They're struggling to find people to fulfill certain offices. And they rush things. They don't plan and prepare enough, not only the meeting, but what's happening in between. Our members in our smaller lodges are very stretched. I don't believe that you need to have very big lodges, but you do need within a lodge a range of people, a diverse mix of people with different skills, different capabilities. And to achieve that, you need to do what you're saying. You need to recognize that we're all different. We bring different things with us into Freemasonry, and we've joined for different reasons, and we develop different aspects through our Freemasonry. And the more our lodges can, as you say, listen, understand, and satisfy the needs and expectations of different members, the more satisfied they'll be. I happen to think that in the 21st century, people want to have their voice heard. If they join something, they want to be involved. They want something of good quality. They want something that respects them, and they need an involvement early on, but an involvement that they want, not what the lodge tells them that they should have. So I somehow think that you and me, Othman, are on a fairly parallel track here. So thank you very much indeed.
One more thing, could you think that introduction of the Master Mason Forum and academies to help new Masons will cure some of the problems?
Well, I think what you're describing is initiatives in the province of Cheshire. Many of our provinces have been working very hard during the pandemic to provide meaningful Masonic experiences, Masonic value, if you like, to our new and our existing members. And the Masters and Masons Forum in the province of Cheshire has been doing exactly that, and have been running what they call an academy, which is a sort of online lodge of instruction, brethren. Very high quality, well prepared, well organized, good quality experiences. And I believe that's what the working man who joins Freemasonry today wants.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you, Othman. We will go to Vance.
Hello, Tony. I'm a Mason in California, and I too was an entered apprentice Mason in 1971, Fairfax Lodge 556. Basically, our lodge, we had 7 senior DMLAs become Masons from the lodge. I found that the lodge itself was good, but we were always continually guided, but we weren't able to express, well, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to do. And it just kind of went on. Also, I wanted to ask you, with affiliation, you say people leave after the first, maybe the first year. Would they not affiliate with a lodge that's more common with them? Because that's that's what a lot of us did. I mean, I've affiliated with another lodge, and I'm affiliating with another lodge, and I belong to Research Lodge in the UK. So, I mean, those are things that I'm doing. But also another thing is, what about the dues?
Okay. So first of all, congratulations on your 50th anniversary, Vance, as well. If I sort of address the issue about affiliation, or what we call in English under United Grand Lodge of England, joining membership, I suspect that if somebody has only been in for a year, they'll know very little about the option to join another lodge. They will probably take their experience from one lodge. And I know this is the case because I'm now talking to people who have resigned. They weren't aware that there was an option to join another lodge. People at that early stage are probably not told enough. And I go back to something John said earlier, that people need to be better informed when they join us. But of course, we have a bottom-up membership system. By that, I mean that people become Freemasons by joining a particular lodge. So that particular lodge is probably not going to tell them that there's lots of other options open to them, and to say to them, "Are you sure you're joining the right lodge?" Most lodges, that are seeking more candidates are likely to want to keep them focused on joining that particular lodge. So I suspect within a year or so of people joining, they will take their experience of that one lodge and they won't look beyond that lodge. And it's the job of people like myself and others in our provinces who follow up resignations to say to people, well, look, you were interested in Freemasonry. It may be that you didn't join the lodge that was best suited to you. Let's see if we can find another one. And we've recently adjusted a rule within United Grand Lodge of England to facilitate that more easily, to help people who are unattached, who are not currently affiliated to any particular lodge, to find another lodge that is suited to them. So I think that may be part of the answer. I think there's the answer itself has many different facets. A better match of the man to the lodge is an important part of that. And of course, that's what part of the members pathway is doing. It's looking at improving the quality of the decisions that are made at that particular point, and improving the quality of the interview process. So yeah, thank you for your comments there, Vance. And let's hope we can learn from that idea of giving people more choice at a particular point.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Vance. We will go to Jim Young.
So,
hi, Jim.
I can remember when I joined the lodge some 25 years ago, sitting in the steward's chair thinking, for God's sake, how on earth I'm going to remember all this stuff? And that frightened the living daylights out of me, and I would have willingly left then. And the only response you would get, if you would dare to ask anybody, was the word tradition. As if there was some stone tablet handed down to that lodge at some time in the past, and it can't be varied from. And I just wonder, is there any place for a heads-up display for the ritual, rather than having to learn the ritual? You could actually have this big safety net in place where airline pilots have, not airline pilots, but fighter pilots have head-up display, which they can look at the people and they can read the script, much like the boat does, much like the Archbishop of Canterbury does, and take that fear away. And then it'll build confidence in the people, and they might want to learn the stuff, particularly when they've got to travel around the lodge at various parts of ceremony, and then build their confidence up from the bottom up, rather than frighten them with the all the various bits and pieces you're faced with as an apprentice. You think, oh dear, how on earth am I going to learn this 14-page piece of work? Yeah. So is there any place in the future for a heads-up display to get rid of part of this problem?
Jim, thanks for the question. It's interesting, your initial comments. You were referring to a particular time, and it's a time that I remember where we were in awe of the seniors in the lodge, but we came from a deferential background. We recognised the pecking order, and of course people use that. I suspect part of the challenge now is that we need to adapt to a world in which people, in the world of work, our organisational hierarchies are much flatter. People use first names when we communicate with each other. People are listened to as well as instructed. We don't follow command and control in many organizations nowadays. So people are used to a different organizational culture. And when they come to a traditional lodge that still acts in the way that you're talking about, there's a cultural clash. And I think that is part of our issues. Moving on to what you're saying about making it easier to learn the ritual, and you know, your particular solution is an interesting one. I'm sure that technology will develop in such a way that sort of personal heads-up displays or teleprompter type things or whatever will become more portable and more easy. And I'm a great believer that we should harness technology. But I'm also a great believer that we should harness what we know about how people learn. And I want to, in this context, I want to put our lodges back into, if you like, their traditional purpose. You know, the idea of bringing an apprentice into the craft was for a master to teach and instruct one-to-one another person, and to go at his pace and to teach him and to consolidate that learning. So you spent a lot of time working with that person. You didn't say, go away and next month come back having learnt 14 pages. And by the way, do it on your own. You worked with them. And we keep talking, don't we, brethren, of Freemasonry being about personal development. And some of us talk about Freemasonry being a particular form, a special form of personal development. Well, if we want to develop people, let's make sure that the way we do it is personal to them. So my answer, Jim, is yes, partly to use technology, whether it's the type of technology you mentioned or whether we can harness other technologies, you know, is another point. But let's also make use of one-to-one personalized instruction, teaching, education, support, development. Let's call it mentoring. And let's go at the pace of the individual. And let's find out how he wants to learn. And let's listen to what he's telling us. And let's break it down into small chunks. Brethren, you heard that one of my qualifications is in psychology and another in education. I'm fusing these two things together in what I'm saying to you. And I think we need a better understanding of that and a better practice of that. If you like, we need to return to our roots. Now, I do, you know, just bringing it back to the technology thing, and there is this big issue, isn't there, about technology in the lodge room. We know that United Grand Lodge has said that lodge meetings happen with people physically in place in the same lodge room. And we know that a lodge is a sealed environment. So whatever technology we use in that has to be technology that is not connected to the outside world. So I think there's a lot of debate around the sort of proposal that you have, but I've got no doubt, Jim, that as technology develops, we should be looking at it and using technology in a way that is advantageous to us and our members and their learning, because essentially it's about learning and how we support that. So thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We will go to Giovanni.
Hello, Tony.
Hi,
Great
Giovanni.
presentation, as always.
Thank you.
I just want to share with you guys my personal experience. I joined my English Mother Lodge in 1999 in London. And after 5-6 years, I had to move to Italy for work. So, but I didn't leave my mother lodge. I then joined an Italian lodge when I got over here. And every year, 3-4 times a year, I would go back to my mother lodge to attend the meeting. And then, as you know, traveling is always, sometimes I couldn't make it because of work or whatever, because we used to meet on a Monday. And a lot of my Italian brothers were interested in coming, but because of the Monday situation, losing 2 days of work or whatever. So I start a little fight with my brothers, my English brother, say, look, let's make it on Saturday, I mean, so that we could come Friday night, have a good weekend in London, do the meeting on Saturday, and then everybody's happy. And at first it was a lot of, no, we meet on Monday, really traditionalist. Eventually, after 4 or 5 years of that, when the lodge was dwindling to 7 members, I brought over 10, 12 Italian brothers to the lodge. So now all of a sudden we are, 20. And we're meeting on a Saturday. And what we're doing now, because we also make more members on the chapter, which there was only 5 at the time.
Mhm.
So now we got 20 chapter members, of which half of it Italian. And we're meeting Saturday morning, we're doing chapter. Saturday afternoon, we're doing the craft.
Mhm.
Everybody's happy. And I think this is, a way, it took me time to get everybody to change it. But the lodge is now doing well. A lot of Italian brothers are coming over happy. They're not losing a day work. And, just a little bit of flexibility sometimes goes a long way.
Giovanni,
to improve.
I think you're absolutely right. What your story is a fascinating case study, because what you've done is you've identified a particular group of people with a common interest. You've found a lodge where they can all join together, and indeed a chapter, and you've adapted that lodge to suit the needs of that new group of people. And you've got, it's interesting that there are a number of lodges, mostly based out of London, who meet the needs of particular people from overseas. So William Preston Lodge, for example, has a lot of members from France and Belgium. And we have other, there's other examples of people who come from mostly from Europe, but not exclusively. Internet Lodge, for example, has people from all around the world. And there's what you've identified, or what you're telling us, is there's another particular catchment area or group of people who are interested in being English Freemasons. And if lodges are willing to adapt around those particular identified needs to meet their requirements and meet their lifestyle, then there's an opportunity. And that's the sort of thinking that we need more lodges to take. Because what many lodges have done is that they've lost contact with their original purpose. The lodge that I originally wrote this talk for, the sort of original reason for this talk, is a Bristol lodge. And it was one man who was initiated 50 years ago in that lodge. But the lodge itself is almost 100 years old, and it was created for people from Devon who work during the week in Bristol. Well, there isn't such a group of people nowadays, and the lodge has lost contact with that original purpose, and it's drifting because it has not replaced that purpose or that group of people with an alternative. What you're doing, what you've done, you've just described for us how you've taken an existing lodge and you've developed a new purpose for that existing lodge, and how you've adapted it, which is brilliant.
I'll give you another example. Over 10 years ago, because I had about 10, 12 Italian coming with me, and because, in England we meet only 4 times a year, while in Italy it's twice a month, we started over 10 years ago a Skype LOI, Lodge of Instruction, so that the Italian brother and the English brother could meet, see each other face to face. There was more feeling of brotherhood, if you know what I mean. So once a week, we would do an LOI via Skype. Now we do it via WhatsApp, via Zoom.
Yes.
But that brings everybody together. The feeling of meeting only 4 times a year, if you could, because sometimes you couldn't make the 4 meetings a year.
Yeah.
But the LOI being there, it's great, and it's appreciated.
Giovanni, I'm sorry to interrupt you, my friend. I'm sure that we will see more of that in future years because of the success of our use of this platform. And I'm looking forward to us continuing to use Zoom in that sort of manner. I'm very conscious, Giovanni, that there's a number of other people on. So I'm gonna move back to Gurdeep to see if we got another question. There's a lot of people with their hand up, my friend.
Thank you. Sorry to take your
Giovanni.
time.
Oh, yes, it's okay. It's good.
Thank you, Giovanni. Brethren, I really must say that we are running out of time, and if you can please keep to questions only. We only have about 10-15 minutes at the very most. We've got about another 10 people with their hands up. So yeah, let's crack on. And we'll go to Michael Littlefield.
Hello, Tony.
Hi, Michael.
On the basis that we're going to deal with questions only, I won't go into too much detail. I joined Masonry. I was initiated in 1972, so I've still got another year to go. Sometime afterwards, the then provincial Grand Master of the province told me that they were thinking of starting another lodge because a neighbouring town had got far too many members and a waiting list of something like 10 people. We haven't got that pleasure anymore. What I really would like to say is I think that the one aspect that was very, very good in my young days and has been good all the way through in engendering friendship and development is visiting. You made the point earlier that a lot of people don't get outside the lodge that they were initiated into. I was lucky enough to be able to take them around, see examples, get to know a lot of people. I won't go further than that, but I just think that that is an item that probably is so often missed. Thank you very much.
I think you're absolutely right. Michael, I think you're absolutely right. My comment was that in their early first or 2 years, you know, people are perhaps more naive. They don't have the awareness of how we're organised to realise that they might be able to move to another lodge, which of course isn't an easy thing to do because every lodge has the right to decide who joins it. But thank you for your comment, Michael.
Yeah, I'll just make the one point, Tony. I was lucky enough that my sponsor and seconder were relatively high in the province, and they made a point of taking me around when they were making visits. I was just that lucky.
Yeah, yeah, very good. It's a very good point. Thank you. So let's keep it to questions, brethren.
Thank you, Michael. We will go to John Mason.
Tony, what a good talk. My question is, your talk is on 1917 to 2017, but your Facebook at the back of the picture is for 2017. Is there any particular on it?
The talk is, yeah, it's probably, actually the one behind, the talk is 19...
No, the one behind you is 2017, but the one you put up on your thing was 2017.
Oh, well, I'm only human, John. Thank you for pointing it out.
That's because he went back to the future and came back already.
Yeah, the dials are all over the place, I'm afraid.
May I quickly say that in Germany...
Flux capacitor, John, it's the flux capacitor.
In Germany, to become a master mason, you have to have visited at least 6 other lodges, and you have a passport for that effect.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
Yeah, just to clarify, brethren, I'm looking back 50 years and I'm looking forward 50 years. And I suspect in 7 months' time, there'll be a talk called Back to the Future, Freemasonry from 1972 to 2072, which will be very similar.
Thank you, John. We will go to Paul Greek.
Tony, another very well thought out and well researched
Thank you, Paul.
talk.
Thank you.
I agree with you about the fact that we need to adapt to the needs of the new members, and I follow your 7 habits. But how do you cater for different requirements when some people's requirements may be the complete opposite to others? Like, for example, some members may want to start early and finish early, and other members may want to start later and finish later.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Paul, and thank you for asking it. I don't think that every requirement can be met by every lodge, and that's why we need diversity in our lodges. We need, I mean, it comes back to the whole concept of evolution and Darwin's own statements on evolution that says, you know, we need to multiply, vary, let the strongest live and the weakest die. And if you have, and this is why I said within my talk, I imagine this scenario where every man within his geographical or interest area had a lodge. There was at least one lodge that would satisfy his needs. So I would like to think that across a range, if we can strengthen the craft enough, if we can strengthen our lodges enough, and that will probably mean fewer but stronger lodges, then it would be easier for a man to be able to say, well, actually, what I'm looking for, I can't be at a meeting before 7, and I'm really interested in these issues or these aspects of Freemasonry. And if we can then direct that man to a lodge that can meet at 7 with those particular interests, that is far more likely. So it does mean that we've got to screen better the people who come to us. It does mean that we've got to be more honest with people who want to join our lodge. And that when we're introducing people into our lodges, we need to be honest with them as well. One of the people that I introduced into Freemasonry, he was a good friend of mine. He was interested in joining. We'd spoken about it for some time, but I came to the realization that none of my lodges were suitable for him, or rather, none of my lodges would satisfy what he hoped to get. So I took him to another lodge. I directed him to another lodge, and he's still in the craft. I fear that if I'd tried to bring him into one of my lodges, none of the lodges that I'm a member of, or none of the lodges I was a member of at the time, would have satisfied him, and I fear that he may well have left. So I think we need to be more focused upon the needs of the man rather than our personal needs or the needs of our lodge. And I think we need that range and diversity. And that's difficult when our lodges are getting smaller, because we have a surplus of supply and an insufficient demand. And that means that we make decisions that perhaps aren't in the best interest of the people coming in. And the other aspect of it is we need to be more rigorous at the interview and at the screening and interview stage, which are known as step 5 and 6 in the members pathway. The techniques are in there, brethren. We just have to use them. It's not a perfect answer, Paul, because we're human and there's a lot of variation, and there's, we all have our weaknesses, but I think the solution lies in diversity, range of options for anybody wishing to join. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We will go to Rinesh.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Tony, for this. I unfortunately was not able to attend right from the beginning. So in case if you have covered this up, kindly, you can obviously skip. I'm hoping to catch this up in the next time when you give this lecture.
Thank you.
So have you actually come across a research or some points in any of the paper ever before where the same discussion which we are having today, like what is going to be in future, whether Freemasonry will be there or not, won't be there, has ever been covered? And if yes, what were the points which they thought would have actually helped them?
Well, I'm not aware, or not off the top of my head. One of the things I've done is I've looked at data from United Grand Lodge. And I've looked at membership, lodge, numbers of lodges, Grand Lodge certificates, and so forth. And I've tried to take an empirical view of the trend, the mathematics, and that's where the first scenario comes in, the first scenario for 2071. But I'm not familiar with. I don't know of anybody else who's gone as far ahead as this as I have. Now, if there is somebody else, I'd love to be in touch with them. But there are other people who've looked at membership issues and have coming up with membership proposals and membership suggestions. But I'm not aware of anybody who's done what I've done in this talk today.
Tony, I was actually asking somewhere around the 1900s or the 1800s if somebody has ever written.
Sorry. Yeah, there's a lot of. Sorry, I do apologize, Rinesh. Yeah, people like Paul Calderwood have looked at, in particular, he's made a study of the 20th century. And his Prestonian lecture, he followed me as Prestonian lecturer in 2013. And his Prestonian lecture looked at, in particular, looked at the press. It's called How We Were Seen. But he's recently produced a book which looks at the development of Freemasonry, or the history of Freemasonry, English Freemasonry in particular, over the 20th century. And the data is the same, really.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rinesh.
Thank you, Rinesh. We will go to Fiona.
Hello. Thank you very much, Tony, for your wonderful lecture. I'm actually in the OWF province of West Kent, so we're probably not too
wonderful.
far from each other. But I will keep it short because I know there are several other people who would also like to ask questions. Not speaking about my own lodge, if we were to imagine a hypothetical lodge where the more senior members are resistant to change and the younger members are on the brink of leaving because they feel left out and unsupported, what advice would you give if you were parachuted in to those two respective groups? How would you persuade the more resistant members that they need to change and evolve? And how would you persuade the younger members that they need to stay in the lodge and keep persevering with their masonry?
What a fantastic question. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you.
I've given quite a lot of thought to these issues, and there's some articles on my website on exactly this, how to address resistance to change, and it's will feature as one of the chapters in the book I'm writing at the moment. My first point in trying to address this today is to say that if people are resistant to change, it tends to be because they're trying to protect something that's important to them. Now, it may be their perception of something, and it may be that their perception is wrong. So there's a lot of people within Freemasonry who've been brought in the last 50 years who believe that the sort of evolution and change in the organization of their lodges is just not in keeping with what Freemasonry is. So the first thing is, first thing I've tried to do is to provide a more accurate historical perspective on change within Freemasonry. So change has always been a part of Freemasonry, and at different phases in our development over the last 300 plus years, change has either been faster or slower. It's probably been at its slowest in the second half of the 20th century. So they came in at a time when it was very slow. So they wouldn't have experienced it in the same way that others used to and others do now. The other thing I would say, I'm often told by people, is that no one likes change, and I don't agree with that. A lot of people do. What most people don't want, what most people don't like, is loss. So I would start by listening to both groups of people, and I would want to build an understanding of what it is they're concerned about losing, or what it is they wish to gain. In the case of the newer members, what it is that they want that is not here. In the case of the change-resistant members, what it is that they're frightened or concerned about losing. Now, I think we need to understand and respect that for many older people, Freemasonry is a rock in their life. It's a constant. It's something which is familiar to them, which changes little for them in a confusing world where so many other things are changing around them. So I think we have to understand that, and we have to respect that. But having developed a better understanding, I think my general approach, and this is not formulaic, it's just general. My general approach is to ask them to appeal to their good nature and ask them to experiment, or be willing for other people to experiment, and to give them the support, and really ask them to think about what they want their lodge to be like in the future. Because if you ask people to think about what do you think your lodge will be like if it carries on as it is, and what would you like it to be like ideally, in other words, compare the two scenarios. And if you ask them that question, you quite often get people beginning to realize that something's got to change. And if you can ask them to be willing to try something, let other people let's just review it and let's see how it goes. And I think what I would be saying to the newer members, ultimately they'll make their decision, and I'd rather they go to another lodge than leave Freemasonry as a whole. And I think we, the more senior members, have got to be more supportive to those guys. But I think I might try to appeal to them and say, can you give it a bit longer to see whether we can try to get these other guys on board, because you've got something special here. Let's see if we can preserve that. Let's see if we can build on that, and let's see if you can play your part in its future. So I'm a great believer in longevity, in past and future as being a continuous timeline, and how we create legacy and how we contribute to the future. So it's difficult to be more specific, Fiona, without actually talking to real people, because otherwise it just sounds like a formula. But it is very much about listening, understanding needs, and asking people to, give it some time to work together. And sometimes you need a facilitator to help that process.
Thank you, Fiona.
That's a very comprehensive answer. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. There is an article on my website that you might find of interest.
Oh, can we have the link to your website, please?
Yeah, of
Sorry.
course.
Thank you.
I'll just put the link in. So, but thank you. Back to you, Gurdeep.
Sure, we'll go to Finn.
Yeah, thank you, first of all, for a very, very good presentation. It's very interesting. And I think we see similar difficulties or challenges in Scandinavia as well, in Denmark, especially. And I think that I hope, Gurdeep, you will have this presentation on YouTube, right? Yeah, so it'll be all right if we use this presentation or this recording as a reference for discussion on improving our local lodges and our challenges we have or foresee. Is that
Finn? Certainly, Freemasons Without Borders will put this recording on their channel. I'm taking bookings to deliver this to other lodges and provinces and groups, and I'll be very, when I do that, there'll be a recording on my YouTube channel as well of the same talk. I tend not to put the Q&A. I tend not to publish the Q&A session. That's my, for my own channel. But I'm very, if you wanted to invite me to deliver this talk or any other talk to your lodge or to, which Grand Lodge are you under?
Well, I'm in the Danish Freemason.
Yep.
I'm part of the Swedish Rite.
I'm familiar with the Swedish Rite. I've visited Norway and Iceland and given talks and attended lodges, so I have some knowledge of the differences.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes, Finn, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Finn. Tony, we have 5 minutes. We have 3 more questions.
Okay.
So we will go straight to Stephen Langerman.
Stephen?
I think we may have just lost him. We'll go to...
unmute Steve.
Sorry, I've just unmuted myself. Tony, thank you. Brilliant presentation.
Thank you.
I think it will lead a lot of us to go back and read through the members pathway with great detail.
Good.
Perhaps you've talked about the past, the present, and the future, but there is the elephant in the room by the name of COVID. How do you think that will affect what you think might be the future? To all of us, not just in Great Britain, but all around the world, in fact.
Well, it's a very interesting question. In the long term, probably very little. But we're looking. Our horizon is fairly. It's a 6-month horizon at the moment, isn't it? We're looking at the rest of this year. A lot of us were looking at our lodges resuming regular meetings at some point, probably after June. In some cases before, maybe. In some cases, come September. And I think a lot of our focus in that period is going to be getting the lodges back up to normal meetings, synchronizing our business and our progression of masters and so forth. And I suspect that many lodges won't be giving a great deal of thought to these issues in that immediate period. I think we've had a great opportunity during COVID, not an opportunity we would have wanted, but I think there has been a very good opportunity during COVID for lodges to look to the future and to think about how they organize themselves and how they improve their management and functioning. What I do hope is that we have become more aware of our wider membership, and I hope that we continue to have the level of contact outside of lodge meetings that many lodges have had through things like Zoom meetings. I hope we will continue to have a much better delivery of Masonic education, which platforms such as this have been absolutely superb at providing. I really don't want us to put that back into the bottle. I think we've now got an opportunity to really build on a much broader Masonic educational frameworks and to include people from many different jurisdictions around the world. So I hope that we'll continue to do that. I hope that we will come out of this more caring, more considerate, and I hope that will reflect as well. We are caring and considerate in Freemasonry. Who knows, it may attract some people to us. We know that some people have wanted to rejoin Freemasonry because lodges have reached out to them. We know that our better or our improved public profile has attracted more people to us as a result of COVID. And I do suspect that some lodges will be quite busy as they introduce people over the next year and 2 years, perhaps, as a result of this. But I do hope that we don't lose sight of the fact that just having more members I hope we do not lose sight of the fact that just having more candidates does not put everything right. There's too many lodges that think we've got a couple of candidates in the offing, we'll be okay. I'm sorry, but the leaky bucket has been with us for a long, long period of time. We're still losing more members than we're bringing members in. And yet we're bringing in UGLE alone, we're bringing in 11,000 a year. Sorry, 8,000 a year. 8,000, we're losing 11,000 a year. We're bringing in 8,000 a year. So I think COVID has given us opportunities. I think we have to seize them, but we mustn't lose sight of the fundamental membership challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. We will go to Ray.
Hi, Ray.
Good evening, Tony, and thanks again for a great lecture. Tony, you talked about, resistance to change. We have several female brethren in our room with us tonight.
Yep.
Do you ever see a future where UGLE will embrace female masonry along with male masonry? Not necessarily combined lodges, but under the umbrella of UGLE. Do you see that as a foreseeable event in the future?
Well, I think UGLE, and I hope my friends in the OWF and Freemasonry for Women would agree with this. I think UGLE in recent years has embraced women's Freemasonry. But I don't think embracing means combining, and I certainly don't think it's needs to be a takeover. The OWF and Freemasonry for Women are independent organisations. They make their own decisions. It happens to be that their members want women-only Freemasonry. So I actually don't see a need to create a mixed organisation or a stream within the organisation for women-only lodges, because that's already provided by very successful, very well-managed organisations themselves. And let's face it, it's up to them their future is in their hands. UGLE's future is in UGLE's hands. What I hope is that we will continue what we've been doing for the last few years, and frankly, I wish we'd done it earlier, and that is to work more closely together, to cooperate together, and to as equal partners. Now, I'll give you some practical examples of this. The Kindred Lodges Association, that's the lodge association for youth organisations. We did a joint event with the Scout Association last year, where both the OWF and the HFAF were working with us. That's just one example. I've given talks for both organisations myself over the last few months. Within Nottinghamshire, I'm working with the OWF to look at our university scheme, and we're working on an equal basis for that. It's in its early stages, but that is developing. We've heard the great support that our Grand Secretary is giving to the two women's only organisations, and at least one of them has approached us, and the Grand Secretary and I have discussed this in order for them to adopt the use of the members pathway. So there's lots of opportunities now for us to work together. And, I think that is very, very exciting. I don't think currently there's any appetite, need, or whatever for formalizing that as part of one organization. I think we can coexist and coexist very, very well if we develop the trajectory we're on at the moment. And
Thank you
looking
very
around
much.
at our brethren from the OWF and the HFAF, I think that broadly is where they're at as well. But Ray, it's a really good question, and it's a question we should keep asking. What we should keep doing is reviewing and improving our working relationships.
Thank you, Ray. We will go to our final question with Gary.
Gary, can you unmute yourself?
Tony, wonderful presentation. Due to the lateness of the evening, which is my afternoon, I'll be quick. I'm a third generation in the first Manhattan in New York that produced Grand Masters, Grand Secretaries, and Grand Treasurers. And when I started in with my father and grandfather, I was the youngest, and there was a difference of maybe 30, 40 years between me and the elders. But our lodge and our district always pushed for the new brothers to have their own identity. And to this day, as a matter of fact, we're having an election in the next meeting. We like to give the reins to the new, younger generation because it's going to be their lodge for the future. Some lodges don't agree with that, and they like to hold on to the reins of the lodge, but we have always found that to be progressive and maintain membership, that it's really the new brothers lodge to grow with. And that's what I want to say. I mean, it's been a good formula. We have a North Star program now that's producing, through the proper advertising, thousands of new candidates for each of the lodges. So it's a great program. We're bringing in a lot of young 18 and overs. So like I said, due to the lateness of the evening, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Gary, and thanks for sharing that experience, because you're confirming the point I'm making. And I think, I think the working man who's used to being respected and valued, and who brings something with him when he joins our lodges, he's not satisfied for just being, sat there and told to do as he's told. He wants to be involved. And we already know that there are lodges that are, passing on the reins, as you call it, at an early stage with others around to support and mentor them. And that's got to be a way forward. So, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Hillary, do you want to come on very fast?
Hillary, you're muted. Excellent.
Thank you, Tony. That was very interesting. Just a personal experience. I've been a Freemason 27 years, and 4 years ago, I decided to join another lodge. Probably one of the best things I ever did. And do you think it's something that we should encourage, even if you have been a member for years? Having a fresh view is also very good.
Yes, it can. I quite agree. And as somebody who's in quite a number of lodges, then, I have to say my experience matches yours. It's great to have different lodges. I have to say there's been times in my Masonic experience when I've been disappointed by one or more of my lodges, but other lodges have made up for it. I've also been very fortunate that I've been very busy in Freemason with roles outside of my lodges, which has meant that I've, my Masonic experience is much more extensive than one lodge. I think really, though, the start point isn't to have a formula that we try to suggest to people they should follow. In fact, I would argue that we use the word should or you should too often in Freemasonry. I hear far too many people tell other people what they believe is right for them without listening to what the person wants. And I think that really is the start point. Yeah. I go back to a comment I made earlier. If Freemasonry really is a special form of personal development, let's make the development we offer personal. and let's listen to what people want. So if somebody says, you know, I'm not getting everything I want from my lodge, then that is a good trigger to say, well, let's have a look at some options. Let's have a look at different ways in which you can get what you want, albeit by perhaps broadening your Masonic scope. It isn't always about leaving one lodge and joining another. It might be, you know, about visiting more. It might be about getting involved in work outside of the lodge. It might be about joining another lodge. It might be about joining another order. You know, there's a number of different avenues that we can follow in order to get the member experience that we really want. And if nothing else, I would like people to think about what are the member experiences that we're offering and that we're helping other people to get. Are they satisfying? Are they rewarding? Are they benefiting from Freemasonry in the way that they want to? And joining another lodge, it can be a very, I agree with you, can be very useful, but I wouldn't say it's the solution for everybody.
No, probably not, but yeah, it's
one.
there.
Absolutely. And I can't imagine my Freemasonry without being a member of a number of lodges. So
no.
Thank you.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. Well, brethren, that is all for today, and we'll quickly announce our winners, Brian Harfield and Martin Sweeney. The monks are on their way to you. Look out for them in the post. Tony, thank you once again very much for coming back and giving us this exciting talk on Back to the Future Freemasonry. And thank you, brethren, for all your questions. I bid you all a very good evening. I look forward to you all joining us next Tuesday for our lecture on the Ark of the Covenant, Masonic or Not, by Ian Currens, the Grand Summus of the Order of the Scarlet Cord. Stay safe, brethren, and see you next Tuesday, same time.
Fantastic.
Thank
you.
Thank
you. Thank you, brethren.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good evening, brethren.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gurdeep. Thank you.
Amit, you didn't answer my question.